Hi. I'm gonna proceed to borrow an ego, to borrow words, to borrow phrases, to borrow identifications, to borrow familiarity in order to send meaning in little boats made out of egos so you can understand what I mean. Because in a way, we're all dressed in these egos, and this is how we communicate with each other. But the real language is beyond everything that we see and we identify ourselves with. We use words for communicational purposes. At least that's what they should be for. But most of us get attached to them, and we end up fighting over words more than trying to come into awareness of what we mean. Ego is definitely a hard concept to grasp, and for somebody that's coming to terms with their spiritual journey, it's very, very, very hard to embed in our mind. It takes time and practice to transcend the ego in situations where it's important, as well as use the ego in situations where it's also important. Like, for example, when is an ego important? This is the thing. We familiarize ego with something bad. And that's fine, because we are living in a duality-based world. So this is what we do. But it's not always so bad, especially if you come to terms with that. This phase is not really who I really am. Lifted consciousness is not really who I really am. Carolina Flores is not really who I really am. These things were borrowed to me for a little bit, so I can experience this beautiful thing we call life on earth. Knowing this gives me this freedom. I freed myself to look at my ego as a piece of art that I use to display my intentions with. The colors of my emotions. I use them to paint pictures that help me perceive life in healthier aspects. It's not always so bad, people. It's bad when we are attached to that. And it's funny that there's a culture of people that talk about transcendent ego, and they get attached to this ego of transcendent ego, that they believe that they have transcended ego, but then they haven't, because they think themselves as better than other people that haven't. What do you gain out of telling somebody that is their ego talking, or that they have a big ego? You get nothing but your ego satisfying itself. Ego recognizes ego. You're not going to solve a situation by telling them that their ego is big, or that their ego is the one talking. They have to realize that themselves. You have to realize yourself that it is your ego realizing that. So it's definitely a little hard to grasp. There's a lot of paradox in coming to realization of what ego is and how it plays a role in your life, and how you are playing a role, and that role is the ego. So you can either look at it like a bad thing, something that you have to kill, even though if you're gonna kill your ego, that sounds like you're going to commit suicide, because to me, there's still ego no matter what, as long as I'm alive here right now. But the point is to not be attached to it, and to look at it like art, if you may. For me, it's what makes it easy. I have fun with this ego. I tried to adopt perception. The main one being that we're all free. We have this free will to perceive life according to whatever convenience we have, or whatever need, or whatever need of entertainment, or whatever need of curiosity that we need to satisfy, whatever it is. We'll have that freedom to do it. The point is to not get attached to it, to realize that you're not, your ego is not like an ice cube. You think it is an ice cube, and you try to grab it and hold on to it tight, but the more you hold on to it, the more it's going to slip out of your hand, and you're going to realize that it's water. We're always changing, and you have to give yourself that openness to change. When you attach yourself to your ego, you don't give yourself that space to change. You think that this is who you have to be. There is nothing more to it besides this, who you have to be now. All while you are changing, and you're not the same person you were a minute ago. So this is what you do when you dissolve the ego, when you diminish the ego, or when you get rid of the attachment to your ego. You give yourself more space to grow and to connect deeply and to see the situation outside of what you think it should be. Also sounds like opening your heart dissolves the ego. No wonder love is so scary for most of us, and everybody's petrified of falling in love, because falling in love is very, very ego shattering. It makes us question reality. It makes us feel like sometimes we don't even want to exist, or that we don't exist, or that we're nothing, or that we're not worth it. And just love does this. We no need for psychedelics. You experience ego deaths all day if you look at them like that, rather than becoming a victim of yourself. In looking at your heart like it's broken, you can look at your heart as it's being broken, but broken opened to the beautiful love that is pervading this whole universe, the unconditional love that transcends time and space. This is what you do when you open your heart to unity consciousness and dissolve the ego, or at least make it all come into full oneness with the fact that it's all one thing, and ego is a projection of your own mind, and that's fine, and you don't have to beat yourself up for it. You don't. All you have to do is be aware and stay in awareness and in mindfulness that this is not who you really are, and that you can always change and become better. Whether you want to call that your ego diminishing or being killed, or the point is to remove yourself from that trying to identify it everywhere. Just like when we start our spiritual journey and we try to identify positivity everywhere, or we try to identify negativity everywhere, there's a point that we're going to hit a wall, and we have to bring everything into wholeness, into oneness. Ego separates. Ego lives in fear. Ego is always classifying things, or better or worse. This is what it does. Ego attaches itself to personal emotional references and uses that to create the next experience. So when we release these things, when we open our heart, we simultaneously shatter our ego. And it's a beautiful thing. And there goes a relationship between the power of the heart and the ego, or the practice of diminishing the ego, and stop resisting life and giving yourself more freedom to be compassionate and to be free. Because what is freedom? It's not dressing however you want and saying whatever the hell you want. That's not really what freedom is. Freedom is giving yourself the chance to be authentic, without shame, without embarrassment, without fear. Giving yourself the freedom to see yourself in order to improve as a person and evolve as a human being, because this is what you're here for. You're here to learn from the school of life and improve who you are, not the size of your pockets and how much money you have in the bank. Beautiful abundance as well, but let that abundance come from your heart. This is where it all starts. And that is ego shattering. And right now, this video is ego shattering. We must not be scared of transformation. And we must not be scared of getting uncomfortable, and shifting perspectives could hurt and can be a little tough. But it enhances life, and at the end of the day, you're going to be the main beneficiary, and everybody around you as well. And everybody lifts when one person is lifted. So it's important for all of us to take responsibility for ourselves and see where we can improve. Thank you for listening for yet another rambling by Lifted Conscious.